All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this public event. My name is Haewon Lee, Director and Curator of Emily A. Wallace Gallery at SUNY College at Old Westbury. I'm delighted to host this public event titled Below the Eyes, Sexuality and Averting the Gaze. It was sponsored by SUNY College at Old Westbury, Have Art and Will Travel. And I would like to thank Linda Stein for giving this talk today, and also her assistant Rachel and Anna Marie Ho, as well as School of Arts and Sciences. So let me introduce the artist Linda Stein, born in 1943 in the United States. She lives and works in Manhattan, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and also East Hampton, New York. She is a founding president of the nonprofit Have Arts Will Travel, Inc. for courageous kindness, addressing bullying and diversity. Have Art Will Travel currently oversees the fluidity of gender and Holocaust heroes, fierce females, 2 traveling exhibitions with the educational workshops. Other exhibitions for travel include Displacement from Home, Sexism and Masculinities, Feminities, Below the Eyes, Sexuality and Averting the Gaze. In 2018, Stein was honored as one of the Women's E-News's 21 leaders for the 21st century. She received the 2017 New York City Art Teachers Association UFT Artist of the Year Award and the 2016 Artist of the Year Award from National Association of Women Artists. Stein's art archives are at Smith College, and the Linda Stein Art Education Collection is at Penn State University. In 2020, PSCU endowed in perpetuity an annual Linda Stein Upstander Award with yearly awards starting at $1,500 for scholars using Stein's archives to inspire the bullied, bullies, and bystanders to become brave upstanders for justice. Stein's art collection is most recently being acquired by a long list of museums, and Durham University Art Collection in Durham, UK, Georgia Museum of Art in Athens, Georgia, and Konstmuseet in Sweden, Manchester Art Gallery in UK, Martin Art Gallery in Pennsylvania, Northampton Museum and Art Gallery in UK, Palmer Museum of Art in Pennsylvania, and Ringling Museum of Art in Florida, and University Reading Art Collection in UK, Victoria Gallery Museum in UK, and Williams College Museum of Art in Massachusetts. Please welcome Linda Stein, and I would like to hand over the virtual stage to her. And after her presentation, we will have a Q&A sessions. I would like to ask you to write your questions on chat, and you're also welcome to just ask questions on Zoom. All right, so please welcome Linda Stein.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me thank you, Haewon Lee, for inviting me here today. And I'm so pleased to be included in the very fine exhibition you curated called Pandemic Diaries at SUNY Old Westbury. And I'm also delighted that Dr. Timothy Sands, the president of SUNY Old Westbury, can be here today to join us, as well as lots of friends I know that are coming, and I'm delighted you're here. I'd also like to thank again Anna Marie Ho, who, amongst other things, seamlessly arranged this webinar. And thank you, Anna Marie, and working with Rachel Bergenthal, the highly capable studio manager for me in the nonprofit Have Art Will Travel. Have Art Will Travel aims, as you could see, for courageous kindness in this oh so difficult world that we're living in today. Let me give you an idea of what growing up was like for me in the 1940s and 1950s. I'm 78 now, so that was more than half century ago, a time much, much different than now. I was this little ball-playing kid who beat all the girls and most of the boys in popular games of the day: ping pong, marbles, bowling, yo-yo. I was the district yo-yo champion of my neighborhood and cherished the diamond-studded yo-yo that I won. I wish I had a picture now. It's at Smith College, but I wish I had a picture to show you. I just thought it was the most glamorous yo-yo I ever saw. And it cost big money. It cost 60 cents in those days, which was a lot. So sports took up most of my non-homework time after elementary school, and playing with girls was rare, though I did have some good gal pals, and I guess with them I played board games and house, which didn't compare in my mind with box baseball and curveball played on the city streets. In 5th grade at PS 94 in the Bronx, it was whispered in my ear that Gary likes you. And I soon learned he's the 11-year-old safety patrol crossing guard wearing that magnificent white plastic sash and looking very grown-up and authoritative. My friends and I saw him every day when crossing the street to go home from school. It occurs to me now there were no girl crossing guards in those days. True, I noticed that Gary looked at me funny as I waited for the traffic light to turn green each day, but I didn't know what that meant. It wasn't until he asked me to go to a school party with him that I knew he was now my boyfriend. I didn't ask any questions or assume I could choose another boyfriend. It seemed that girls didn't have much agency in the 1950s, and I accepted that that was the way it was. My story growing up mid-century wouldn't be complete without my introducing you to my decade older sister. She was so very important to me. A professional model, my own role model. I knew she was very sexy. In fact, I think now it may have been this particular bathing suit she's wearing in this fashion ad photo that was handed down to me when I was 14. Oh, how I loved that bathing suit. Of course, I had to stuff the bra of the suit with nylon stockings to fill it out, but I idolized her and thought she was every bit as beautiful as the prime movie star of the day, Marilyn Monroe. It was Marilyn who was flaunted everywhere as the ideal female, the role model for what every girl and woman should want to be. This was the culture, the times in which I was brought up, and it needs to be seen as the backdrop for my life's journey, my resource material, if you will. It was Marilyn and my sister who informed my teenage goals and desires and spurred me on to have my hair with one side forward and one side back, movie style. It was Marilyn and my sister who represented what I should aspire to as an adult at the midpoint of the 20th century. So with this backdrop, it came as a real surprise to me when I first found myself in bed with a woman. She was 2 decades my senior, a returning Queens College student, and we both were sophomores in an Education 101 class. We played tennis almost every day. And even in winter, when we drove to a local public tennis court, taking from the back of her car a tennis net and a shovel even, so we could remove snow from the court. We had sex before I knew what the term homosexual meant. She and I shuddered to think we might actually be homo. In my circle, that word was only used in hushed tones and jokes. Maybe you heard this one, such as, My mother made me a homosexual. Oh, if I give her the wool, will she make me one too? Homosexual, homosexuality, homo. We became extremely worried and decided that she would ask her shrink if what we were doing was that. We waited anxiously to hear his answer. No, he said, don't call it homosexual. For therapeutic reasons, I guess. Allowing us to heave this huge sigh of relief and continue our betting each time we met. I was just so naive in those days, almost as I was with Gary, the safety crossing guard. Lesbian was hardly mentioned, and gay wasn't used much either. There was an enormous amount of stigma attached to the word homosexual, and we heard it was even listed as a mental illness by the Psychiatric Association. Life as sophomores in 1962, compared with today, was like living on another planet. Even with homophobia still around now in 2021, so many people are now open to and accepting of non-binary folks. So fast forward with me now to my finally comprehending, that what we were doing was indeed homosexual, a word I knew was uttered only in deep derision. My shame then was visceral and intense. I believed I now joined those who were the most loathed inhabitants on earth. I began recording my feelings with sketches in a diary. I wrote, I must tell no one. I must hide it from every living person I know. I'm totally despicable. Some of these faces I'm drawing look back at me with disdain, even disgust. I have to make sure they can't see me. But no, that's not enough. I don't want even the potential of being seen. Here, my notes on the left top corner confirm that I came out to my sister and brother-in-law on June 20th, 1987, a very big event. To me, the imaginary face to the right looks stern and displeased. I have to leave the eyes out altogether, I wrote. I must begin just below the eyes. Was I averting the gaze, as we say in today's lingo, the gaze of my own drawings and paintings staring critically back at me? I had to be sure that none of these faces had the means to see me, this me that was so very bad. Obsession took over as I saw profiles everywhere, in clouds, trees, buildings, textures, cracks in the sidewalk. I was impelled to draw and paint myriad profile forms in every configuration. I made notes to myself in these diaries, questioning, what am I doing? Where will my experiments go from here? I don't want to miss any variation that comes to mind. Sometimes my drawings included parts of the nose, lips, and chin in every form I could think of, until it all morphed into what was an idealized form for me, one that I felt had a certain presence and power, a large, strong, abstracted nose with absolutely the perfect arc and angle, merging just so with soft, sensuous lips, curvilinear chin, strapping neck, and what became an expansive landscape for the shoulder, which sometimes continued onto another totally abstract canvas, the second part of a diptych. I wanted to protect and project an image of profile and the shoulders soaring above a vast swath of land, as huge and all-empowering as possible. I'm reminded now of how much pain I felt as I struggled with my sexuality. Each of the 28 diaries I've now completed detail the ups and downs of my sexual life and evolving womanhood. My art and writing reflected everything. It showed that I was a budding feminist, an activist, with a longing to write and record my journey, to let it all hang out on the page in order to relieve my stress. And it did relieve my stress. It always had the effect of calming my nerves, easing my depression, and helping me feel less lonely and helpless. It's a bit weird, I must say, rereading these diaries now, so many years later, to see such angst in my life and to see on paper how being a pencil person soothed my anxiety as I modified and perfected in my mind versions of the profile over and over again. I eventually even decided to make a set of guidelines, as I call them, as if others could see my process and learn how to do it themselves. I was very careful to explain the angle and kind of line I wanted. I wrote, the nose begins with a fast line at a 75 to 80 degree angle. It starts dark and fades away. The point of the pencil barely touches the paper at the nose's tip. Oh, the sensuality of it all. The curve of the chin begins as dark as possible and then fades in a sweeping movement. These were my rules for making profiles, and I followed them faithfully. That is until such time as I needed to reach beyond them. I created my profiles in series, and they're very easy to follow on my website, with titles that included identifiers such as the Profile Sketch series, the Profile Solid series, Profile Writing, Marbleized, Fringed, Compartmentalized, Notation, Letter, the Profile Palette series. Here I would use the palette paper itself to form a new profile after mixing colors on it for other paintings in process and progress. The Profile Daub series, Profile Landscape, and here's another diptych. I so enjoyed making one side entirely abstract and the other side conforming to my profile rules. The Profile Flying series. At times, these looked to me like birds in the air, but my focus was on homing in on this idealized form coming from deep within. When I got to the Profile Envelope series, I unfolded actual envelopes, refolded them, and drew them with profile writing for addresses and squiggly lines or shading for stamps, until the sculptor in me took over and another series began, which had profile writing in combination with my idea of alphabet letters, in this case made with coral found on the beach. This construction is called All Letters Rest on a Baseline. Soon bent nails and found objects were replacing profile parts, and shells and small stones were included in what I called missives. I kept to the format of a written letter with date at the upper right. Can you see that? Imagine that upper right being the date, salutation, as if it were Dear Ms. Jones, with comma, identifications for paragraphs, not identifications, indentations for paragraphs, and signature at the end. This kind of work continued for a long time until I was asked by the curator of an exhibition called Bad Girls to make the most outrageous sculpture I could think of. And I was launched on a new journey with the machete blade as focus. For me, the machete blade became a symbol of protection and power. I published newspaper and journal articles with the title, My Blades Are My Bodyguards. In some exhibitions, the sculptures hung and swayed gently from the ceiling with almost invisible cords. Many viewers didn't notice the machetes until they came up really close. Then in 2001, after 9/11, and running for an entire day from my ground zero studio, and watching the trade towers just fall in one swoop, I realized how much that word protection meant to me throughout my life, and titled my next series, Nights of Protection, again making an idealized, rather androgynous figure, which sometimes included superheroes and icons of protection, highlighting especially my all-time favorite upstander, Wonder Woman. This series led to another theme I call body swapping, which included sculptural art that could be worn on the body. And now the nonprofit Have Art Will Travel came to the fore, enriching its educational programs to include upstander behavior and courageous kindness. Body swapping was followed by other series and stories, but all of these will remain for another discussion at another time in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. That was a really great talk and summarizing, telling us, sharing your story, very courageous. And now let's take some questions. Audience, if you have any questions, please write your questions on chat box.
Thank you, Fred Fleischer. And I'm delighted you are here, Timothy Sams. Daniel Kraus, my friend who I corresponded with for many years from China, where he was. And Teresa Younger. Oh, Teresa is a favorite of mine. She's the executive director of the Ms. Foundation, and all of you should know her and know Ms.
Okay, we have a great question from Patty Harris. She is the department chair of visual art department at SUNY Old Westbury. The question is, can you say something about how repetition works in relation to anxiety in your work, especially with the early profiles?
That's a very interesting question. It's meditative. I'm a swimmer. I meditate while I'm swimming. My mind wanders. I am creative while I'm swimming. If there's someone swimming next to me with a red bathing suit, it's jarring and it interrupts my alpha state. And that's what happens with the repetition of my drawings. I get into a kind of alpha state. It becomes automatic. I think it's left brain, right brain. At this point, my left brain is not in the picture, and I'm just feeling and flowing with my left brain, and the repetition becomes a way of protecting. I use that word a lot when I meant repeating and repeating the same form over and over until it is perfected. And that's what my aim is, to perfect the image. Not that I do it consciously, it just comes unconsciously.
That's a very interesting answer. I remember when I was studying Yayoi Kusama's work, the compulsive repetition that she used in the work. I think one of the scholars have interpreted as a way to master, gaining mastery of the skills that she was working on, and also a way of yeah, kind of overcoming that anxiety within the artist. Here's another question by Diana Papademos. Interesting, yes. I'm curious about the PSU connection and whether or not you believe that your work has any local enlightening influences on that institution. I was on the faculty many years ago, and there was a little gender support. Invisibility was actually preferred. The PSU athletic scandals raise many gender questions, and I wonder in what way you may have considered how your association with the PSU is creatively helpful.
It's a very interesting question. You saw when Heywan listed the museums that have collected my work, that the Palmer Museum at Pennsylvania State University is amongst those that have acquired my work. I first went there with one of my 2 traveling exhibitions. There will be more traveling exhibitions, but the 2 that are going around now are Fluidity of Gender, which I started in 2008, well before the term became one that's on everyone's lips, and Holocaust Heroes, Fierce Females. So Fluidity of Gender went to Penn State, and I gave a lecture, and we did a local performance about protection and upstander behavior, as we do at every institution. And the head of the visual arts department at the time, Karen Kiefer Boyd, approached me and said she enjoyed the lecture very much and the events around and the traveling exhibit, and would I like to be involved with Penn State more and have my work there and be part of a whole program that she wanted me to be a part of. Judy Chicago was the one other artist there, and would I be a second artist at Penn State? And our relationship just grew and grew. My art archives, as I said, are at Smith, but my education archives are at Penn State. And one very generous collector and supporter gave money so that Penn State could have the Linda Stein Upstander Award. And every year someone gets $1,500 through Penn State University. And there is a very extensive programming that goes on at Penn State that includes my work. So I think it's creatively helpful to me and hopefully to the many students at Penn State that take part in it. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Diana, for such an interesting question, and thanks, Linda, for the answer. Any other questions? Vicky Bester asked, I would like to learn more about how you train upstanders.
Yes, Vicky Bester is a very new friend of mine. I'm delighted you're here, Vicky. A neighbor here in Massachusetts, where I'm now in Cambridge. And we do a variety of programs. Have Art Will Travel goes to institutions, and we always have an exhibit, and we have a performance by local creative artists. So either they're dancers or poets or actors. And it's extremely inspiring to me to see their creativity, and they work in collaboration with a group of people or alone. I'll give you an example. Montana. In Montana, at the Halter Museum, we had the fluidity of gender. And there were 3 performers that signed up: a poet, a dancer, and someone who helped decrate and install the exhibit, someone working at the Halter Museum. And when I said to her, "Oh, what are you going to do tonight?" It always took place after my lecture. She said, I'm not telling you, you'll be surprised. So I said, okay. The dancer came and did a performance based on being an upstander. So how do you creatively translate that into dance? She did it beautifully, and some of the works are up online, so you could actually see that. One woman at Joplin, Missouri said to me, oh, and they wear my sculpture. So the body swapping image you're seeing now is what they might put on. They're different. There's one that's all leather, and there's one that has Wonder Woman icons all over it. They put on the sculpture and they do the performance wearing the sculpture. And the woman from Joplin put on this leather sculpture, and she said, well, when I was preparing my dance, it was going to be much more feminine. But after hearing you talk, I decided to make it much more powerful. So I hope you like it. And back at Halter Museum in Montana, the woman that wouldn't tell me what she did came after the dancer and after a wonderful poet that wrote a poem about being an upstander. And this woman came and said, Paige, her first name was, it's up online. You could find them all in my website, and because it was recorded. And she said to the audience, hi, I'm Paige. Most of you know me. I live here all my life, but you know, I've been hiding all my life. And I want you to know, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that though in the 5th row is my husband and next to him is my mother, I'm queer. That's the word she used. And I want you to see me as queer. Yes, I love my husband. And when we were engaged to marry, you said to me, how could you get married? You're a lesbian, aren't you? And she said, I hate labels. Please don't see me with labels anymore. I'm here to say for the first time, this is the performance she's giving that she didn't want to tell me. So the audience sat and listened to how she said, don't label me. I love my husband. And I don't consider myself straight, although I'm monogamous, she said, but I want to be seen as queer. Just call me queer. The audience was in tears. So that fabulous dancer and that fabulous poet, unfortunately, was outshined because everyone came over to this woman, teary-eyed, to speak to her, and the bravery she exhibited in telling her story, which is still moving to me this day. So how does one be an upstander? I think she was an upstander for herself at that moment. She said, this is who I am. Please see me. I don't want to hide anymore. And to a certain extent, I'm saying now, after hiding for so many decades, I'm saying I am who I am. And if I could help anybody listening to this webinar and give them inspiration to come out of the closet in whatever aspect of the closet they're in, not necessarily sexuality. I could think of nothing better to do with my time. So I hope there are those that that might take some daring steps after hearing me talk. I see there's an alum of PSU there, Fred. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Sams. Appreciate what you're saying. Was there anyone else that you could talk about your sexuality while you were growing up? Was there anybody else that you could talk to about my sexuality while I was growing up besides your partner at the time? Was your art your outlet for communicating about the subject back in the day? Daniel, that's you got to the heart of the whole matter. There was no one else I could talk to. I was in hiding, and I was so embarrassed and so ashamed, and it was such a waste of time for a girl growing up with all the other problems of being a girl rather than a boy, and the misogyny and what else. But this hiding because I was gay just took over so much of my life and so much of my diaries. So yes, the art became my outlet, as I'm sure it is for you, Daniel, a wonderful artist himself. And I was able to calm down when I was upset just by opening up my sketchbook and writing my notes or making sketches. So I imagine there were people around I could go to. I could go to my sister, perhaps my mother, but I was afraid to. I felt what I was doing was so terrible that I didn't want to burden them with the terrible person I was.
Thank you, Linda. May I ask you a question?
Of course.
There's another comment by Daniel.
Society is just not a nice place. I've been ignoring it for a long time, but not because of my sexual orientation, just because the people dictating the norms are not nice or humble. Well, we're living in a really crazy world, aren't we? So that's enough said, but I agree with you. Hey, Juan, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to, it's very interesting to see the evolution of your work from drawings, projects, obsessively drawing profiles, images, and then you moved on to making sculptures, like assemblage type sculptures, and then you moved on to creating this armor-like figures. I'm just wondering if you, what influenced you when you made that transition from drawing project to three-dimensional sculptural work, and if you had any artists that might have influenced you in that process?
There were many artists that influenced me. Frank Steller is in the news because he has a sculpture that is now at the World Trade Center. Rauschenberg influenced me. There were many artists that did. When I came to doing sculpture, it was just a desire to see something in the round. I guess it was more intimate, more real, more powerful. I guess the word powerful must come into play here. I felt it was more related to me. I could feel the sculpture much more. So it isn't anything that I verbalized at the time. It just came that way.
Thank you. We have a comment by Karen Discus.
I think I was put down because I like boy things, like working on cars and stoiling toilets and mucking out stalls. Well, I certainly understand that. And, you know, growing up, boy things were valued much more than girl things. So there's a reason for some of the jealousy we feel. I feel it's not penis envy that I have, it's privilege envy, power envy, mobility envy. And the boys that I knew growing up had much more of that than the girls. So Jason, hi Jason, what inspired you to create your work, and what message would it take to those who view your work? Well, a lot of it I've talked about. 9/11 was a very big influence on my work. I was doing abstract work entirely until there was this rapping on the door and the police barged in and said, "Get out of here," and start running up Church Street, the street next to my studio. And don't even lock the doors, just go and start running. And for a whole day, I ran. And at one point looked over my shoulder and said, "Why are they throwing furniture off the trade tower?" And it wasn't furniture, it was people jumping. And another time I turned around and the tower just went straight down. No tilt, just straight down in one swoop. And I walked with my staff, we were holding hands and kind of running, walking. And somebody, my manager at the time said, let's go uptown. Let's keep running uptown. And I said, well, they bombed downtown, so they're probably going to bomb uptown next. Maybe we should stay here. So we sat on Canal Street for 2 hours, probably. No, every store closed immediately. No radios were there. But to make a long story short, I finally got to Uptown 84th Street and stayed with a friend for 8 months, and thought after 8 months I would come back and continue my abstract work. But all of a sudden the abstract work became vertical, had a waist, had shoulders, and I was into my knights of protection. And it looked like armor, it looked like warriors. And I said, what am I doing? I'm a pacifist. And then Wonder Woman came to mind, and I said, yes, there is a connection with this protective quality that Wonder Woman had. And that's how she became my favorite icon. I mean, there are others, Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Storm from X-Men comics. One thing about trying to find protector upstanders, there's so few of them that are of color, and that is really what's wrong with comic books. And it's changing. I hope it changes faster and faster. But Storm, Wonder Woman, Lisbeth Salander, I even used Lady Gaga and Nausicaa and other anime characters. I hope I answered that question in that 9/11 answer. It certainly changed my life and changed my art. And that's how I became a figurative artist. And I realized that I'm making symbols of protection. And I realized also that I would have recurring dreams. I don't know how many of you had recurring dreams, but mine was always running away from bad guys that were trying to hurt me. And the whole dream was running and running and running. I never got caught, but I'd wake up pretty tired and realized that I was running for safety and protection, and that it was very much a part of my life.
That's interesting because I had such a recurring dreams all over my youth, but it stopped at some point.
Yes, maybe when you realized and paid attention to the recurring dreams. I had this daytime dream, maybe you would call it, where if I were driving in a car, and I did a whole tapestry, sculptural tapestry on this theme. If I were driving in a car and I passed someone, probably a man, in the middle lane, and I was in the left lane passing, I would automatically, unconsciously, automatically turn around to see if he had a gun to shoot me. True. It occurred for years and years until I realized what I was doing. And then at the moment I realized what I was doing, that I was automatically turning just to see, you know, if he minded what, I don't know, minded I was passing him. I mean, I think as a girl growing up, it was so hard to be better or to pass in any way a boy that I made my whole life revolve around that. So I was this very good athlete, right? And I would purposely lose every game I played with a boy. So I would hit the bowling ball into the alley gutter and the tennis ball or ping pong ball into the net. And this way the boy always won. And if I played with a boy who was really a super athlete and far better than me, I would feel such joy in that I could play my best and still accomplish what was necessary to be feminine. I mean, can you just get nauseous from hearing this? Still accomplish what was being necessary for me to do, what was necessary for me to do, and that was to make sure the boy felt better, stronger, and more capable than I was. Mary White, hi, Corky. It's wonderful that you're here today. This has been the most wonderful part of my day. Thank you very much. Growing up as I did in your era with a couple of years head start on you, I took a much longer time to resist many aspects of official culture and the strictures of society. Thank you, Linda, for saying it and doing it with power and kindness. Well, Corky is an extraordinary person and a scholar in her own right, and I admire what you do, Corky. So thank you for coming. Go teach a wonderful class. So I think both being a girl and being a gay and being a lesbian growing up in the 1950s. And once again, I was born in 1943. So the 50s were really just a time when women should only concentrate on getting the dirt out of a man's collar when doing a wash. So I don't know. Did you have that kind of growing up too, Haywan?
Well, I think my background is a little different. I grew up in Korea during 80s and part of the 90s, and my mom often compared me to other girls. Look and so, she knows how to help mom and how to cook, but I just never had that interest in what's happening in the kitchen. So I also felt a real sexual inequality, especially during holiday time. Now, Thanksgiving is coming, right? We have a big holidays in Korea, and during those big holidays, you go to relatives' houses, and I noticed that my uncles and older males are sitting in the room, and while older women are in the kitchen making food. And I was very young, and I thought that it is totally unfair. What if my aunts, they want to rest, they want to just to talk in the room instead of cooking, working. So I noticed that that was totally wrong, and that was, maybe I was a 7, 8, that sort of age, and I knew from the beginning I was a feminist. But I'm not gay, but I knew that it was totally wrong for women to go through that. And things are changing, definitely changing rapidly in Korea, but it's still a long way to go, definitely.
Yeah,
So.
and it's very tough in the art world. And, you know, that's why an organization such as the Ms. Foundation that Teresa is heading is so very important at this time. And other organizations for female artists and art historians. And I don't know if Dr. Sams is still with us, but I hope it's good at SUNY Old Westbury, where you are. I think it's changing a lot, but I know my wife Helen, who is a scholar, you know, it was not so easy for a woman to get a full professorship, to get a doctorate, to get you know, promoted in the academic world, and the art world is certainly like that. So I think this might be a good time to end this webinar, unless there's any last minute question. I've enjoyed it so very much, and I certainly could be reached by anyone who would like to contact me at linda@lindastein.com. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have. And Vicki, thank you for your comment, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today. So, and thank you, Hye-Won, very much.
Thank you everyone who came to this webinar, and it was a really wonderful talk. Thanks so much, Linda, and everyone who participated in this public event.